Everybody, welcome to another episode of Life Talks. Today I have Matt Izzo on, third time on, brother. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so right off the bat, I want to speak about your race. You did a Ironman race. So for people who are not familiar with that, if you could just give a brief summary of like what that entails and really diving into your experience of it.
Yeah, sure. So that was on November the 5th, Ironman, Florida, in Panama City Beach, Florida. And the race is a 2.4 mile swim. That's on the Gulf of Mexico there. So like a open ocean swim basically. And then it's a 112-mile bike ride through the Florida Panhandle. And then you come back and you run a marathon, 26.2 miles to end the day. And you got to do it in under 17 hours.
So say that again, 2.4,
Two point,
112.
it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and a 26.2 mile run.
Crazy. So walk me through that. How was it? Starting out with the swim. Break it down. Like, what were your thoughts going into it? Maybe even taking a step back. What initially had you sign up for it?
Yeah, sure. So, like, there's a few perspectives you can look at something like this from, and they all have some value in them. It's important, I think, not to necessarily live in one or the other. I started doing triathlon back in 2019 just because I was looking for a challenge, and I had listened to David Goggins' book "Can't Hurt Me." So I signed up for a triathlon. I had 24 days to train for it, and it was a tough race. It was an international distance race, so like a 600-meter open ocean swim. It was an 18-mile bike ride and like a 5-mile run, most of it on the beach. And for I'd never done anything like this before in my life, but I was in decent shape, so I just decided to give it a whirl. And I got my ass kicked in that race. I think I finished 29th out of 31st in my age group. I didn't have any time to like train or anything, and I was competing against some decent athletes, some good athletes, people who work really hard at this. So I got what I deserved, but getting to the starting line of that race, even not even the finish line, but just getting to the starting line, that was one of the key moments in my life, I'd say. Just going running into that ocean. So I started, looking into doing more triathlons, and then I, signed up for a longer race, an Ironman 7D.3, which is half the distance of that full length Ironman. Still pretty far with a 1.2 mile swim, a 56-mile bike ride, and then 13.1 mile run. So I signed up for that, and I didn't know that I could do something like that. It seemed really intimidating. But I figured, what the heck, I'll give it a try. So I just trained like crazy for it, and then that was the COVID year. So obviously, this race never ended up happening. So I ended up training a whole 23 months until I finally got to like do this race. And then the next kind of logical step, I guess, was to do an Ironman, because at one point I was actually running through the woods in Lewis Morris Park uh, over there in Mendham, and I just had kind of the inspiration that like you're gonna do an Ironman and then write a book about it. So I just kind of made that my long term goal, and I did it. So it was about a 3 year journey. And let me tell you, it's not like something that I thought I would do as a kid or anything like that. This is way far beyond anything I ever thought I was capable of. It's just kind of a progression, in terms of where I've gotten, overcoming obesity and just getting into shape and just looking for new ways to challenge myself, and this was certainly one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a way to challenge yourself with that kind of that hurdle. I mean, that's a hurdle. It's I mean, geez, 112. It's funny, like when because I've also listened to David Goggins. What stood out to me when I first heard him was the fact that he had run 100-mile races 8 consecutive weekends in a row. And it's funny because older me would be like, "Oh, that's so cool. He's Superman." But the version of me now, I look at that, I'm like, what
Yeah.
drives someone to do that? Not so much the feat. Like, the feat is awesome. We accomplished that. It's respectable. But it was more of like, what drives somebody to do that? And I think about all the things that he says. The thinking mind wants to come up, and it really gets in our way. And to continue to go through that, you have to be so disciplined and
Yeah.
being in control of yourself that it's more what I one of my favorite lines is he's training for life. It's not even about the race, he's training for life on how to deal with those difficult times. But walk me through it. So
Yeah.
it starts with the swim. So what's going
Yeah.
through your mind? Like,
So,
paint the picture for me.
you're about to, you're standing on and the energy of it's electric, right? One of the coolest things about Ironman is they make you feel like you're a pro athlete, right? And this is probably the highest level of athletic competition that most adult amateur athletes can compete in. There are some legitimate like athletes that do this race, and some people who are in just incredible shape. It's a very challenging event, obviously. So you're lined up on the beach with all these people. Everybody's in their wetsuits, and it was a swim around this pier twice, basically. So you had to go into the water, swim out about a half mile, swim across the pier, the length of the pier, and then swim back, get out, go across the beach, and then do it again, right? So that was what the swim was, and it was a pretty rough day in terms of waves. But I'm a pretty accomplished open water swimmer at this point. I had done a 2.5 mile open water swim in the ocean before, so it didn't really phase me. I was kind of looking forward to the fun of it, just because it's a lot more fun swimming in the ocean than in the pool. And if you get good at kind of navigating currents and stuff like that, it's a really energizing experience, and it's really like an ultimate flow state activity. You just kind of become one with the energy of the water and the
Well,
wave.
at what point did it become, because I know people listening, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm growing and running just a few miles. What point did it become where it was almost like you're fighting between, it was like flow state? Was there a moment like in your experience with exercising where or was it always just flow? You know what I'm saying?
No, there was definitely moments, for sure, and it's not something even today I can always connect to. Sometimes
Yeah.
it kind of escapes you, but that's the key, especially during a race, is to really you don't want to be thinking about what's ahead of you in something like this. You don't want to treat it like a progress bar as you're installing software, right? And you're like, okay, I'm 18% done now, right? And then because it makes it feel like an overwhelming challenge. So the trick is to just stay in the moment as much as you can, right? And just all you can do is take that next step in front of you, or that next stroke in the water, right? And just try to stay present in the moment. And even later on in the race, when it starts to become a real kind of mental challenge, just setting yourself actionable things, kind of like, oh, I only got to make it up to that light post, then I can walk or something like that, right? Or the aid stations are spaced out every mile, so it's just kind of like, all I got to do is just get to that next aid station. I'll get to that a little bit during the run, but that's where you're trying to keep your mindset. And these open water swims are chaotic. There's lots of people. You get punched and kicked, unintentionally. It's all in good fun. And then
Yeah, I
you're
heard
out.
Boyd Myers talking about that exact thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and you go out pretty far where you can't, you can see the bottom, because it's not the Jersey Shore, right? So you can actually see the bottom,
Yeah.
but it just gets so deep and you can't see the bottom anymore, and you see all these jellyfish, as you're swimming, because you're out pretty far, and the water is just full of these jellyfish, but they're probably well below you for the most part, right? But it's crazy to see. But these open water swims are energizing, especially if you're comfortable doing it, and gives you a lot of energy. So I got through it pretty much exactly as how I planned. It was a long kind of walk up to the point where the swim ended, up to where you change into your bike gear. So that's called transition, right? But it was probably about a half mile, right? And I decided, I'm like, what's the rush here? This is gonna be a long day, right? So I don't need to be jogging up to this thing and expending my energy. I'm just gonna try to soak it up and enjoy it.
Now, how long was that, the first part? Now you finished the
It was
swimming.
it was about an hour and 25 minutes.
Okay.
For the 2.4 miles, which is about pretty much what I expected, right? It's really about energy expenditure. You don't want to expend too much energy on the swim,
Yeah.
because you have a long day ahead of you, obviously. So I decided that, hey, I'm just going to thank all these volunteers who are out here. I'm going to thank all these spectators who are, cheering me on. I'm going to thank all the police officers who are out on the roads and have the roads closed off, right? Like just show my gratitude for everybody out there doing this. There's something like 1,500 people who volunteers, to help put this race on, right? And there's people who are out there standing there, for hours, and some of them cheer you on as you go by, and it really gives you energy doing something like that. So I decided, look, I'm not going to rush through this. I'm going to thank everybody. I'm going to try to bring as much positive energy as I can, because that feeds back to you
Yeah.
as the day goes on. So I got out on the bike, right? And it's a long bike ride. It was the longest I'd ever ridden the bike before. Was this, not a very challenging course. It's flat, in Florida Panhandle, but it's hard. It's a long way to ride your bike, and especially staying disciplined at the start of the bike ride, because you don't want to go out too hard, right? And you see people just blowing past you, right? And it's like, all right, well, everybody's running their own race and something.
Yeah.
So I tried to hold back, because obviously you can go a lot more, at the early stages of that. And there's all kinds of energy and stuff, when you're first getting started. But so just kind of got through that bike ride as best I could. After about mile 70, you just hit this really strong gust of wind that really kind of was blowing in off the Gulf. So it was in your face for pretty much the whole bike ride back, from like mile 70 to mile 112. And it's but you're just happy you get through it. And the big concern during the bike leg is there's the chance of mechanical issues with your bike, and that can really kind of ruin your day. If something goes wrong with your bike, and you either got to try to fix it on the side of the road, or if you can't, well, then your race is over and you got to sit out there for a long time until they pick you up, and all these months of training, kind of go by the wayside. So, you kind of get a sense of relief to just kind of put this behind you and say, all right, well, all those dangers are over. So then, you kind of get started on the run, and the run was like 2 laps of down and back, about 6.5 miles. So that really kind of made it manageable. Right? It's like, all right, just get to the end, 6.5 miles, turn around, get to the end, do that twice, right? And there you go. The problem I had was my back hurt a lot. I didn't necessarily have the best bike position, and I've been able to get away with that during shorter races. But in this one, my back was just killing me, and dealt with a lot of pain on that run. So I really wasn't able to run like I'm capable of. So you feel kind of disappointed with that. But it's just every aid station, just packing my back full of ice. Just pouring 3 cups of ice down the back of my kit, and it would numb it for a little bit. And you're just out there trying to get kind of from aid station to aid station. And, the end of it kind of gets tough. And I really wasn't able to run much at the very end, but I still had a ton of energy. So I was trying to just, kind of give it to some of the other athletes and stuff like that. You see some really dark sights out there. There's some people who are in some really dark places, at the end, hour 13 of an Ironman. Not everybody's mowing through this, right? There's people there's people who are out there suffering who aren't going to finish, and they know they're not going to finish, right? And so it can be kind of dark and depressing in some ways. So I tried to just give as much of my energy, encourage the other athletes as much as I could, and I got to the finish line, and I felt great, and just got across it, and that was how the day went. It was about 14 hours. It was a long day.
Well, how long was the second and the third part? So you said the first was about an hour and a half, and that was just basically the start. So all that other time.
The bike was about 6 hours and 15 minutes, which was a little slower than I intended. I was hoping for about 6 hours. So it was about 18 miles per hour on average for that. So you're moving at a decent clip. And then the run ended up being like 6 hours, which was I was disappointed in that, because I have I could have had a 4.5 hour marathon in me probably, 5 hours for sure. So the back pain and stuff had some gastrointestinal issues, right? Because fueling something like this is a challenge in and of itself. that definitely cost me over an hour, right? So this is what I mean from like the different perspectives. As a well-trained triathlete on the day, you're kind of disappointed in the performance, right? This is a race, and people are passing you, and the whole point of the race is to beat them, and you're hypercritical about certain things, right? But in a way that kind of helps you, right? Because you're trying to just kind of maximize what you're doing. And this is the whole point of running the race. Right. And that's not the time to zoom out and take a different perspective on it and be like, hey, 8 years ago I was fat and I couldn't even imagine, running the mile, right? Like that perspective when you're out there on the race course, that doesn't serve you. That's a valid perspective, right? And I could appreciate that now,
Yeah.
looking out overall the bigger picture. But when you're in the race, you're in the race, right? And you take these things seriously because that's the point of doing it. So it's tough to sort of appreciate the gravity of it, right? Just kind of when you finish. Like I really had no doubts about finishing this race. I was really well trained for it. The only kind of thing I had hesitation about was like mechanical problems, acts of God, stuff like that. I was pretty sure if I stayed healthy that I'd be able to finish the race the whole time. So that was it was a different kind of perspective to take on something like this. I've shifted my mindset to be, hey, it's not that I can't do these things. It's that I choose not to do these things, right?
Mm.
You see people who do like these 100-mile ultra marathons and stuff. And I've kind of learned to understand that it's not that I couldn't do a 100-mile ultra marathon. It's that I don't choose to do it, right? And all the energy and time it would take to train for something like that, right? It's not something that's beyond me, right? So that I think speaks to a much healthier sort of
Yeah.
self-image and that kind of thing. But you have to sort of prove that. That's talk is cheap, right?
Yes.
You have to go out and earn that feeling, because if you don't, at a certain point, you're still going to be full of doubt about this. It's not going to be a legitimate belief, right? You gotta go out there and earn it.
Yeah. I think it's important I mean, what I just heard you say is, I mean, it's important to have the right mindset that you're capable of doing anything and really believing that, and I think the fact that you're doing the Ironman is already the proof is in that pudding, so if you can do something like that, that becomes the, uh, a next step that you're capable, but you
Yeah,
know, yeah, I
and
agree.
and the challenging part for me right now is figuring out, hey, what is that next step, right? Because I don't know that it's just doing a longer race at this point. I don't necessarily. I found doing the Ironman challenging, and in some ways not as rewarding as maybe it could have been, was because I never had any doubt throughout the process that I could do this, right? And when I first started doing the Ironman 70.3 training, I didn't think I could even do this. So there was this whole kind of energy of like, wow, like this is amazing. You can do these things, and you can train like this repeatedly. Like I never thought that was possible. But then after you do it for a few years, right, and it's kind of the same idea. It's just some of the
Mm.
training sessions are longer and stuff like that. So that kind of mystery is out of it, and now it's just kind of like a little bit of drudgery, just having to get through all the training, and it's a rough thing to train for us.
Well, walk me through some of the training. So what was like, because you had mentioned earlier that it's like when you've never done that long of a race, right?
Yeah.
So you're not obviously training the entire course of the Ironman throughout the year. So when you're actually there, that's really the test the
Yeah.
strength. But what was your training regimen like?
So I take a periodized approach, basically meaning that I ramp up intensity kind of as my season goes on, and I'll do a few other races throughout the course of the season. Just because it's fun to do races and stuff. So, I like in this year, I guess last year, right now, I started on February 14th. And you kind of build on it. So it's for those first, I'd say 24 weeks of training, it's 6 workouts a week, right? Pretty much one every day. You get an off day. You do strength training twice a week on top of that, but nothing crazy with strength training. But you do 2 runs, 2 bike rides, 2 swims, and then that just kind of builds up. But for the actual race build, I went pretty crazy for like 3 months, for the months of August, September, and October. Because I'm in a position where I'm able to do that, running my own business, right? I was able to kind of put that on the back burner a little bit and say, hey, I might never get the opportunity to do something like this again. Let me just see really what I'm capable of. Let me really see if I focus my time and energy on something like this. Let's just see what I can accomplish. So I trained pretty much twice a day for most of those 3 months. I didn't take any days off. I did, I think it was like 180 hours over 12 weeks. It was like an average of 15 hours a week. It was obviously not every session's intense, and a lot of sessions are recovery oriented. You're really careful about how you manage intensity in your workload, right? Because you have to constantly be recovering from this training in order to get positive adaptations from it. In a lot of ways, I felt like this training really was more the challenge than the Ironman, right? The race starts months before you line up on the beach to go running in the ocean. You have to put in the work for something like that, or else you'll be exposed. So it was a lot of long days. It was a lot of running out in the heat in Florida, running really slow out in the Florida heat. Long bike rides, and just lots of swimming. I was swimming like 15,000 yards a week. Right. It's just because it's a great way
Really?
but this is what I mean. Like, you don't think you're capable of something like this,
Yeah.
right? You're like, oh, I couldn't do 11 multi-hour workouts in a week. Like, that's crazy. That's so far beyond me. And it's like, nope, here you are doing them. Right. So, it taught me that I'm capable of so much more, but at that point, it's not something that necessarily gives energy to your life, right? Exercise can be something that gives energy to your life, but you can get to a certain point where it takes energy from your life,
Yeah.
right? So, I'm careful to, I try to make it clear, like, this is not going to be a long-term lifestyle for me. There's people who do this as a long-term lifestyle. It's probably not the healthiest from a physical and emotional health perspective. I was pretty much like, hey, I'm going to just really focus for these 3 months, and just really just squeeze the rag as hard as I can, right? And just to see how much I can get out of something like this. So
Yeah.
it was more kind of an experiment, because I'm 40 years old now. I've never done anything like this in my life, right? I couldn't cut in Little League. I was warming the bench in PAL basketball when I was in seventh grade, right? Like, so just to be out there competing in something like this, it's crazy for me, and it's kind of like a dream come true in a lot of ways, that I just can do something like this. So I really decided to enjoy it and just kind of honor the process as much as I could, and really just to see what I was made of. So, like I said, when I lined up on the beach that day, I had full confidence that I would be able to get through that race, and I just, I understand how these things scale now, and it's not as hard as people think it is. You're
Yeah.
not, an Ironman is you don't necessarily do a lot of intensity in that. And I think my heart rate broke 150 like for like 10 seconds out of the whole day, right? It's a really sustained moderate effort. You train to build up that sustained moderate effort. You know, if you do
Yeah.
that and you get like the fueling and stuff of it right, it's accessible for anybody
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I've had you on this podcast, is because you are an inspiration, and to see your journey, I think it's so cool, and that's what we're called to do is, be that change that we want to see, and being sharing our journey along the way and sharing, just being real, because I think it's very easy to get lost in this Superman kind of thing, where
really.
it's just like it's there's a Rocky Balboa within all of us, and it's I think of even Goggins, right? Goggins says he hates to run. He hates to do a
Yeah.
lot of things in life, but you know what? It's like on the other side of that is that, maybe diving into this a little bit is that flow state, that consciousness. We talked about that last podcast as well. What was your energy like in that race, in the midst of that race? What is, because I think for people like us, it's a form of meditation, no?
Yeah.
Where you're looking at the thoughts, you're being aware of them when you're running. You can't be thinking about old Matt. You can't be
Yeah.
thinking about, what's going on tomorrow, or how long is it going to take me to get to that next point, right?
Yeah.
Versus looking at what's in front of you, as you had said.
Yeah. I mean, on the bike, right, there is a lot to keep you occupied. So it's usually pretty easy to kind of stay present in the moment. Most of these roads weren't necessarily closed, right? So you're riding your bike down with cars going 50, 60 miles per hour next to you, right? There's a strong wind gust. You're positioning yourself with the other bike riders. You're thinking about hydration and fueling, right? And just kind of maintaining control of the bike. And you're also in a completely novel environment for me. I've never been there before. So it's easy to stay in the moment with something like that. You don't have much time and energy for your mind to start wandering too much. The run, it's a bit of a different story, obviously, right? So it's not nearly as much to kind of keep you occupied, um, especially when it's not going well, right? And it's a painful feeling, right? To just kind of know that you have this kind of goal you'd set, know that you're capable of doing a better time, and just you see it kind of just slipping out of your grasp, and there's nothing you can do about it. And people might say, well, who cares? It doesn't matter. But like, you're doing a race. The whole point of the race is to finish it as quickly as you can. So it's a healthy thing at the time, right? You want to be competitive in this kind of thing. There were a lot of other people from the kind of Twitter community who did this race. Zach Homel and Ryan Dreyer, Adam Sikora, Mike Donatelli, a whole bunch of other people. So seeing all them out on that run, because like I said, it was a down and back twice. So you were passing people constantly, so seeing them out in that run gives you a ton of energy. I got a big hug from Zach, kind of toward the end of that race, right? And it just like that helps a lot, and just it's about just kind of setting realistic expectations of like, hey, all I gotta do is make it another mile, and then I can put some more ice on my back, right? And I'll feel a little bit better for that. And it's not about trying to think of the totality of what you're doing, just because if you do that, it can get overwhelming, right? But then kind of, I knew I did well time wise throughout most of the race. And then I had hit mile 22, and I was alternating running and walking, and my back was in really bad shape at that point, and it hurt a lot. My foot and ankle hurt a lot, and I was really kind of concerned that if I keep trying to run through this, I'm gonna hurt myself. I'm gonna injure myself, and that would be counterproductive, right? Because I'm gonna be able to finish this race at this point. I have many hours to get to the finish line. I was 4 miles away at that point. I said, you know what? I'm just gonna walk. Because I was able to walk at a brisk pace. It didn't hurt. It didn't feel uncomfortable, So I could walk. I have a big smile on my face, right, and just give some energy to those other athletes, and really make kind of going down toward the finish line an enjoyable experience, rather than just trying to get there 15 minutes earlier, running with all this pain and agony and stuff, right? But this isn't how you kind of envision finishing an Ironman. Right, you have this kind of fantasy in your head that you're going to just empty the tank out, right? And you're going to finish line, you're just going to collapse from exhaustion because you gave every ounce of your energy on it. Unfortunately, my body is not as strong as my spirit and my energy is, right? And that's true in all these races. It's always my physical body that deteriorates and breaks down first, right? I got to kind of deal with the reality of being a 40-year-old guy who didn't really pay much attention to his health or fitness levels until his mid 30s, right? I'm competing against guys who have been doing this for 30 years, so I got to be kind of realistic about that, learn from my mistakes, obviously, but the energy is still there. And it's like, hey, if I can, it's funny. At one point, it was about mile 24. There were these drunken kids. It's crazy because you're going down the road in Panama City Beach, Florida, right? And it's a Sunday night. And there's college football going on, and everybody's getting drunk and like cheering on the spectators, right? So it's kind of a rowdy scene. And there were these kids, mile 24. They had this megaphone. And they said something to me as I was walking by. They're like, "I bet you're really regretting your decision to do this right now." And I look over at him, I'm like, not in the least. I'm like a half an hour walk away from becoming an Ironman. Like, what are you talking about? You think I'm regretting it right now? Like if you said this to me back in August, maybe, but
you know what's funny about that? That what Goggins does? I don't know if you heard this, but Goggins, he looks at the comments section of like the negativity or as you have said, Lee, what is it? Crabs in a bucket before, right?
Yeah.
That he takes it, writes it down, records himself speaking what they're saying and uses that as motivation. He is going to take what you say as a negative, flip it, and take your soul. And I love that, right? Because that's it's you're taking the negative and it just bouncing off, right? Because
Yeah,
again, we talk about it's projection, right? So, but that's
yeah.
fuel. Down a certain level of the game, it's like that's fuel. It's like,
Yeah, I gotta say with Goggins, and I love Goggins. I've downloaded his new book. I started listening to it. It's going to be great. And, I certainly listen to his messages, but I don't know that he doesn't always have a positive energy approach with these things, right? And he uses a lot of the negative energy as fuel. And yeah, there is a lot of energy and anger and stuff like that. But I think there's more energy in states of love and joy, right? So when I'm out there, the more I can be in a state of love or joy and just have a big smile on my face, right? Smile at other people and give energy to others. I feel like that's really what propels me more than just the negativity, right?
I
So
spoke about this with Akira. I said, it's interesting you say that because I think there's a balance between the Goggin spirit and like someone like Alan Watts or
yeah,
a lot of these meditative guys. But the reason I really lean into, I think it's important to be able to lean into that Goggins energy, because we both have an affinity for Christ, right? The willingness to be hated and not hate. I think you
yeah,
know,
definitely.
it's to see it for what it is. But no, I definitely understand where you're coming from because it can
And
be very quickly you become like a masochist with the pain,
yeah,
right? It's like more and more and more pain.
and I mean, look, if you're fueling off some of that during a race is fine, right? There's a time and a place for everything. So even if it's not maybe the most emotionally healthy response, it can certainly help you in a time and a place. But there are a lot of people who do endurance sports who obviously have some serious emotional issues, right?
Yeah.
To be fair, it's definitely going to be better than a lot of other vices, right? Be that unhealthy foods or alcohol or porn or gambling, right? Or any of this stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to be better off doing endurance sports. But, there's a lot of people who don't get a lot of joy out of it, it seems, right? And it just becomes a really, it can become a negative sort of comparative thing, right? Because
Mm.
when you start to analyze how you do in these races, right? And again, people who do these races, some of them are incredible athletes, right? Like among the elite amateur athletes in the world, kind of adult amateur athletes. So when you start comparing yourself to them, and the winner of this race overall, I think did it in like 8 hours and 55 minutes, right? And a professional the year before did it in like 7 hours and 42 minutes, right? So like there's levels to this, so comparing yourself to these kind of extraordinary outliers can be unhealthy, right, in a lot of ways, because it's not necessarily a valid comparison. If you're a professional triathlete, obviously, yeah, this matters a lot. But if you're just kind of a weekend warrior, you're doing this for the benefits. Comparing yourself, it kind of, you're missing the point of, well, there's 99.9999% of the population that's not doing this. So you're
Mm.
really choosing to
Yeah.
compare yourself to a tiny fraction of the best, right? And if you can only find satisfaction by improving compared to a tiny fraction of the best at this, like are you really getting joy and fulfillment out of that, or is it just becoming an egocentric thing, right? Where this is the thing with like races, these numbers, right? Numbers stick out to us. Numbers are easy for us to compare. So it's easy to say, hey, you finished this race in this time and I was this time and you won, right? Like it can be unhealthy, and it's a refuge, I think, for unhealthy people. And to a certain extent, I definitely get some emotional sort of well-being from this. And I think it's important not to let it kind of overshadow your life, because doing these races can be addictive, right? And it can kind of fill a void in your life in some ways. And I think it's important to be cognizant of that and not let it overcome you.
Yeah, I think there's a balance between the both because, like, on one end, we are the competitive. That healthy competition is something you grow into because I think the alternative to that too is, on the one end, it's extreme competitiveness, which to your
Yeah,
point, it can be very egotistical. But on the other end, it's like, well, I shouldn't even aim to do anything, right? Eighth place trophies and everything, right? Where
yeah,
just like it's yeah, finding a healthy balance, I think, is something that everybody wants to grow into. I want
yeah.
to shift gears a
All
little bit
right.
here. So I mentioned that I wanted to talk a little bit about AI, and I don't know if you've heard of Chat GPT.
I have, yeah, I've used.
So yeah, so it's been brought to my attention as of late. Maybe just starting, and I'll dive into it more. But your thoughts on AI and Chat GPT and the pros and the cons of it from a human perspective.
So it's an interesting thing, human civilization. If we're going to sort of buy into the traditional paradigm of the evolution of human civilization, which I don't know that we have to, but we can, right? We'll agree on that. It's always kind of been evolving. Right? We're developing new tools. These tools, they're not usually necessarily good or bad in and of themselves. They amplify sort of human nature, right? So, something like a firearm, for example, it can be used for good, hunting and helping out with stuff like that, or it can be used for bad, obviously, right? And this is true, I think, of all the technology we develop, right? A car can be a great technology that gets you where you need to go, or it could kill you, right? There's no
Yeah.
necessarily black and white for these things. And social media is another great example of this, right? It's not good or bad in and of itself. It's just amplifying human nature. And I have to think that to a certain extent, AI is the next sort of progression of that. And I know that there is a desire from many, right? And we'll say more, especially in the conservative sort of people, or the conservative sort of space. There's a desire to sort of get back to the past, and sort of embrace kind of the past, and ancestral sort of things. A part of me can't help but wonder, though, is it not right? Are we not here to kind of take on these new frontiers, right? And is AI really necessarily the work of the devil, or some sort of demon force trying to control humanity? Or is this just the next tool for us to master, right? As we grow and develop as a species, are we being given this powerful tool now to help us further that evolution, right? To create new ways for us to communicate and work together, and to solve even more problems, and to ultimately, I would say, use this as a tool to connect to a higher power, versus seeing this as something that is a negative thing, right? Or some sort of demonic force, which a lot of people will tell you it is. I don't know if it's that black and white or not. It's hard for us. I think it's really hard for us to say, given the perspective that we have on this. We're living through it, right? So how this goes, I don't really know. I know, for example, Elon Musk wants to wire us all up, right, with Neuralink, and kind of connect us all in some sort of thing. And is that evil, or is that just the next step in human evolution, right? Is that just using our technology to sort of redefine what being human means, and the sorts of things we're able to accomplish when we work together and communicate, right? Like, is it really any different than when early humans invented language, right? And it's like, well,
Mm,
now we can talk, right? Well, now we can talk just by our brains communicating, right? Obviously, this is going to be very threatening to us. This is going to be a dramatic paradigm shift, and it's not going to necessarily be great news for everybody living on planet Earth that this is happening, right? So it's going to be a scary time, I think, and the pace of change just accelerates faster and faster and faster. But I like to think that we're capable of handling that, and we are here to sort of prove that we're capable of handling these changes and advancement in technology, right? To do that, to make the world a better place, right? That can be, I think, the motive behind all of it. So, I know something that I think we talked about a little bit before we start recording. I think maybe the answer is just to follow our intuition, because our intuition is not going to steer us wrong about these sort of things.
yeah, I think I've been playing with the idea of giving the devil its due lately. I think that I don't think we're ready for something like this. I think the technology is there, but our human consciousness is not. I think, as you said, talking about your race, that when we compare ourselves with that 1%, fighting against other, as 80% of people, or whatever the number is, people are still obese. Most
Mhm.
people are ignorant, and the people who are aware, as there's times in this conversation where it's like, you're focusing on being that better version of yourself, and you're getting in your own head. I could do more. I could do more. I wish I could have completed the race sooner. Whereas some people who are on a complete another level are saying, dude, you did an Ironman,
Yeah.
right? And it's important to really recognize that. And I think the same thing can be applied to the AI. I think we're not ready for it. I think that, when are we ever ready for it? There's arguments
Yeah.
that can be made against it, but I don't know. Personally, no chip in my head. That's where I stand right now, because I feel like the consciousness thing. I think that we're so disconnected, and I've been playing with this idea of divine intelligence, which I think is our natural state. Which is why I'm so interested in talking with you when you're running, because getting into that flow state, I think that's our natural state. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think too many people are asleep to really to know with certainty that it would be used for good, because I think goodness comes from truth, and truth, it's we have to grow deeper into truth. But that's just my perspective, right? What do I know? I'm just one node in this network, but that's
Yeah.
my what my gut tells me.
I mean, we might not supposed to be chipped, right? We're both kind of old in the grand scheme of things, like this is the thing. You can try to fight against the change, but there's always going to be younger generations coming up, right? And they're going to inherit the world, right? So all the dissenters and all the people who are hesitant about this kind of stuff, well, they'll just die off, right? And you'll
Well,
be
what would
left
you
with
say
kind of
about Christ? Was Christ the dissenter?
uh I don't know if see. I don't know if I have the. I don't even know if I can begin to answer that question. Um, it's hard for me, to even compare the two. I mean, we're this AI. It's not a spiritual entity so much as it is an entity to help us survive in our physical 3D world on Earth, right? In this sort of virtual reality simulation that is our day-to-day lives. AI is a tool that can help us navigate that and manipulate that in exciting new ways, I suppose, right? For good and bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it can touch us in a spiritual level, because it exists at a different level of energy, at least as far as I can tell. That's kind of the way I see it. So I don't think it necessarily affects us on a kind of a deeper spiritual level, right? I do have some concerns, and I don't necessarily know if this makes sense or not. But can our consciousness become trapped in a computer? And like if can our consciousness just become trapped in a computer, and would that ruin some sort of cycle of kind of death and rebirth that I believe we have as spiritual entities? Should we become trapped in a machine, right? Might that be a way to sort of like harvest our soul energy or something like that, and kind of keep us from that sort of natural spiritual cycle? I don't know if that's true or possible or not. It's something that I've thought of. It's going to be an interesting future, right? And it's not going to slow down at any time. So that's it. I mean, whether we're ready for it or not, I don't think it matters. We're going to have to do the best that we can with it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think I spoke about this with another guest I had on, Aaron Moran. That we ultimately are programming, AI. So, to the extent is it good or is it bad? Again, I tend to agree with what you say with, the good versus bad, whereas I think there's truth versus falsehood. And we're coming
Mhm.
to understand that, seeing the world as it is versus how we project it. The world, we can project the world and see it as we want to, or we can see it as it is. And it's very rare individual, I think, who sees it. That's the top of the chart, right? Enlightenment.
Yeah.
Not trying to change other people, not judging people, truly, forgiving. But go ahead.
But what I would say about the enlightenment, right, is you're not supposed to live your life here on Earth at the enlightened energy level, because we've incarnated on the Earth, right, to live a human experience, right?
Mm,
I like to think of it like playing an immersive video game, something like Grand Theft Auto, right? You're holding the controller and you're staring at a TV, but you're in that flow state. You're not seeing it from that perspective. You're immersed in the game, or even like you're watching a movie, for example, right? You're in the movie. And that's kind of the way I see, right? If you take too elevated in the perspective, if you go to the enlightened state, then you're not down here on earth living a human life. And the point of your existence is probably to be down here on earth living a human life. There's
Yeah,
times.
you said that before. I've played with that idea. I
Mhm.
agree with it on a certain level. I think our full capacity, I think, is to be in the world but not of it. And
Yeah.
I think there's, I think for those, I think enlightenment, the path to enlightenment is a very, I think of Elliot Hulse, he said something that was very interesting, stuck to me, is it says, be married or be a monk. And I really like that because the monk is like, you know what? I reject the world. I'm going all the way. And that's someone who becomes a celibate, a priest, or a
Hmm.
monk, or and they devote their life to God, which I would say is that devoting their life to humanity, giving back, trying to understand our human experience on a deeper level, and helping people along that path. The other is the family. And both of these things require responsibility. You're taking care of someone other than yourself. There are exceptions to the rule, but I'm
Hmm.
speaking more so for the world, right? We're just living lukewarm. We have, a decaying morality, etc. Where, we should be aiming up, what would be
Yeah.
the ideal. And I like both of those ideas, but I think the married aspect is to be in the world, but not of it. And I think there's periods of time. And I actually think, what you're doing, and this is my perspective, what you're doing with your race is an act of not being of this world in a sense, right? Because that it doesn't feel good to do that. It does in the midst of it, but the transition from not exercising at all and then going there, it's a very difficult period. And to me, that to me is an aspect of not being of this world because it doesn't make sense because the world says feel good, entertainment, escape. You're going to a place where I'm not going to do that, and I think what are your thoughts on that as far as in the world but not of it? Does that resonate?
Yeah, it does. I kind of see these races as from, just it's on one level it's very trivial, right? You're gonna just spend so much time and energy to just do a triathlon, just to do a long triathlon
Yeah.
faster, right? So and that's certainly a valid perspective you can take on it, and it's something I've wrestled with, right? And it's a reason that I might not do another one of these. It's a big commitment. But I was able to sort of make it what I would call a sub purpose, right? So we all have this overall purpose, right, to here on Earth. I think a lot of people struggle to find what that purpose is. And that might be for good reason, right? But you can make something your sub purpose, right? And make it your temporary purpose. And it doesn't necessarily need to become your permanent purpose. It
I
can
like
just
that.
be sort of a stepping stone as you get closer to your purpose, right? Because if I told you your purpose right now, right, and you said okay, and you spend the next 6 months fulfilling it, well, then what's the point of the rest of your life at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
don't want to get to the end too fast. So for example, in my own life, I made losing fat. I made that my purpose, right?
Yeah.
9 months. It's like all I cared about was fat loss. I
But that's
devoted
not your
all
life's purpose.
I devoted all my energy to it, but that helped me in many ways kind of work toward my overall purpose. And then I kind of see these races in a certain way like that too, right? Like I'm this is more than about me. I'm showing people kind of what's possible. And I feel really strongly that I've gone through what I've gone through as part of a larger overall purpose. It's not just about me. It's about me helping other people. So for example, people will talk about the dangers of a social media addiction or something like that. And I can't help but wonder if, well, maybe I'm supposed to be addicted to social media because maybe this my Twitter platform and other platforms, I can communicate with thousands of people at one time. This important message I have to spread to people, right? Maybe that's better than me just standing on the street corner with a bell, just like
Mm.
a town crier, right? Like this technology's evolved for a reason, and it connects me to people, other people, right? Smart people like you, where we have these conversations, and it helps to advance, the state of human consciousness. So I connect with all these great people and help all these people by kind of sharing my experience and what I'm doing. It's very rewarding in a lot of ways. So I don't necessarily feel guilty about it, especially if I'm taking it from sort of a creative, helpful angle, right? And not
Yeah.
just a self-serving, egotistical angle, or just using it to to kill time and that kind of stuff. Because obviously the the pull of that's always there. But how do we use this kind of time productively and use the social media as a way to make the world a better place, right? And not to just stir up, anxiety.
Yeah, and that's a difficult question. I think you answered that well. I think in the sense that, again, when you're speaking about truth, truth is not happiness. What will make the world a better place? There are people throughout history who thought they were making the world a better place and they made a mess of things. So,
Yeah.
and I think it's conversations like these, just saying, hey, what's truth, right? Push back on my ideas because I'm not my ideas. These are just
Yeah.
belief systems, and that there's that spark of, there's a quote in the Bible: "No one enters unless we become again like a child. We cannot see the kingdom of heaven," something along those lines. And there's that innocence. There's that innocence of, hey, let's have that wonderment for what life is about. What is the truth? What is our highest purpose? And I think it can get so easily pulled into, well, I want that new car. I want this. I want that. Rather than to see them for what they are, they come and they go. You don't get to take your car with you when you die. You don't get to,
Yeah.
the car is not something that eternal, like those states of joy and so on.
Yeah.
So
I've had an evolution like that too, and I'll think about my iPhone. My iPhone's like 4 years old now or something like that. There was a time in my life when I always needed to get the latest, greatest technology. I
yeah,
felt really compelled to just buy, get the new phones and stuff. And, now I have this old iPhone, and it doesn't really work all that well, right? It struggles to do a lot of the video processing and stuff like that. And there's really compelling reasons that I should just get a new phone at this point, especially since I'm using it to run a business and stuff like that, right? So it would be somewhat of a wise investment, but I just don't care. And it's like, this still works good enough, right? So I think that kind of signals to my own kind of personal development. And I realize that getting a new phone, it'll be nice. Like this video will render 15 seconds faster, right? And like that'll be good, but it's not gonna like make me happy or bring me any kind of lasting joy. Whereas in the past, it's always like, well, what's this material thing I can bring into my life that's gonna help me find happiness?
yeah, yeah, I completely agree with you. And I shared the same kind of thing too. When I was younger, I needed to have the latest phone, and now I have the same thing. It's like, what's its function? Is it
Yeah.
helping me with content creation, etc., taking good pictures and all that? Um, so I wanted to dive into just one other thing as far as with your training routine as well for people listening is, what was your diet like, or any recommendations you have, based on your experience that, people
Yeah.
would find value in? Because there's so many different diets. What have you
Definitely.
learned that works good for you?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And well, I'll start by really saying one of the things that I really enjoy about Ironman racing, right, is it forces you to really kind of bring everything into line. Because if you want to train properly for this, you have to be kind of fire on all cylinders, right? Your nutrition has to be spot on. Your habits have to be spot on. You can't be going out and drinking a lot. You have to get great sleep. Like so, all this stuff matters, and it really forced me to optimize all aspects of my life so I could do this. Nutrition and sleep are really the two biggest recovery tools for sure, and they're essential for everyone. Athletes, non-athletes, right? This is sleep is when our body repairs itself, and nutrition is what we it's the energy we intake. I would include sun exposure with that too, because the sun is the most important nutrient, and that's why I'm down here in Florida
Shout out
now.
to Florida.
For sure. So my nutrition now is when you're training for a race like this and you're training 15, 20 hours a week, I eat a lot, right? You have to eat a lot. Like I'm talking, trail mix, handfuls of trail mix out the jar, right? And no one should be doing that, right? But if you're doing 4 hours of training a day, then you can do that. But right, so it's just a lot of protein, right? But at a certain point, if your energy expenditure is at a certain level, you just need calories, really, and it's just it's not you can eat popcorn, you get a lot of wiggle room with your diet when you're just burning that amount of energy, but that's not really applicable to 99.9% of the people. So now, right, I'm running a marathon in 3 weeks, so I'm still training, but not anywhere near like I was. It's like 6 to 8 hours a week. So how to really kind of dial back on how much I've been eating. Make some cutbacks, no more handfuls of trail mix and stuff like that. So I eat in a typical day. I like to start out with some homemade bone broth. Uh, Courtney makes bone broth every week, with beef bones and cook it in the instant pot. And I drink that every morning. It's the first thing that I drink. And then I go out for like a 15-minute walk at sunrise. I'm fortunate enough to have a beautiful little pond down here. So you'll
I've
see the
seen some of the
pictures.
ducks.
Yeah, you'll see the pictures on my social media feed, and I'll be out there doing that. I'll come back. I'll have a glass of goat milk kefir with cacao and goji berries in it. And then I like that because usually I'll do a training session at around 10 a.m. And I've just really only had liquid up to that point, so my stomach is empty, kind of. It makes training easier. And then do some work, and then do some training. After training, I'll have like 6 eggs, oatmeal, and some fruit, along with like the supplements. And then it's kind of just a kind of have another protein based kind of little meal snack probably at some point in the afternoon. Some leftover meat or some shrimp or something like that. And then dinner is just kind of whole foods, right? Protein based, carbohydrate, and vegetable usually. And something like even on a weeknight, something simple, just ground beef with ground organs included in it, and have some rice and just some kimchi with that. Like that's a filling, balanced meal, and it's easy enough to sort of adjust it based upon your goals, right? So if you want to have a large carbohydrate intake, you can have more rice. If you're trying to cut back, you can make that portion smaller. It's about really just preparing the food ahead of time. Courtney does a great job with all that and meal prep. So we have healthy foods to eat all week long, right? So there's never kind of a question of, oh, well, what am I going to eat tonight? There's a bunch of stuff in there that's all ready to go. And you supplement it as the week goes on with like ground beef and stuff. You keep that in the freezer, right? And thaw it out easily. It takes 10 minutes to cook it, right? So that's how we stay on top of this and eat well. And it's such an important part of our lifestyle. Eating these high quality whole foods, right? Organic, right? It's a big controversy. Should you eat organic or not? Like, I don't know how much it matters, but I do tend to find that food labeled organic tends to be higher quality, right? And I don't think the quality of our food is something we should be looking to skimp on, right? If you're looking to cut back, maybe you should cancel cable and eat organic instead, right? I think you might find longer term benefits from
Well
that.
said. I like that. That should be a tweet.
It was a tweet actually at one point, I think, but I think it brought out a lot of haters, right? Because if you talk about stuff like that, people will send a lot of negativity towards you. But eating high quality foods, right? And I work with people one on one as a coach. Fat loss, trying to build healthier habits. And a lot of that is just simple decisions, right? You eat foods from the earth, not food from factories, right? You don't have to get
Yeah.
lost in all of this, but I think on some level we all know what's healthy, and it's not the thing that comes in a package that's full of industrialized oils and sugar and has all these chemicals in it and stuff, right? It's going to be something that comes from the earth, whether it's plant or fish or animal or whatever, right? Like this is the proverbial low hanging fruit, and you can really get lost in the details, but the average person needs to just kind of stop eating this junk food, right? Most of the food you're going to get from a restaurant isn't going to be good for you. So that's really where you can make a lot of gains, and just eat healthy foods, the highest quality you can afford from the earth. Just prepare them simply. Meals don't need to be a crazy ordeal. You can just cook some ground beef and some rice in the instant pot, and then have dinner, right? Like that. That could be that. It's filling and it tastes good. So, that's really kind of how we eat. And, training to the extent I have, it's really important to fuel yourself appropriately. Because nutrition is such an important part of recovery and just sort of long-term durability. And it starts with protein and just high quality foods and making sure you're getting enough, getting that pre and post workout nutrition in, it helps a lot.
Yeah, and I'm actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking about the when it goes to, you mentioned restaurants, but going to like the supermarket, I remember hearing all the good quality stuff is on the outside of the
Yeah.
supermarket. Is on the
Yeah.
outside of the supermarket, and all the crap is on the inside. It's all
Yeah.
the aisles, right? All
Yeah.
the processed food and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah. And then look, there's a few exceptions, obviously, right? If you want olives
Sure,
or anchovies or
sure.
something like that, like okay, right? But for the most part, it's a great rule of thumb to follow, right? Just simple stuff. If you're looking at a food and it's got more than like 5 ingredients in it, right? If it's full of a bunch of chemicals you never heard of, right? If it has listed like canola slash safflower slash rapeseed oil, right? Like they're
Yeah,
giving you
break down the seed oils because
yeah,
that's all
yeah,
over Twitter.
they're giving you the cheapest oil they can, right? Seed oil, not seed oil. That means they're putting in the cheapest oil they can source in their food. And if that's the way they're making their food, they don't care about your health.
And why are they so bad? What do they do to our bodies?
Look, it's a bit of a nuanced
Yeah,
topic, right? And I don't know that you have to be so crazy about
sure.
just avoiding them with complete, entirety. But it's what I like to think of it more as vegetable oils, just the industrialized vegetable oils, right? You see these cheap foods and they have all these vegetable oils listed in them. They're going to be garbage. The oils aren't high quality. They're oxidized probably, like so they're heated. So they could you know provide damage on a cellular level and stuff, right? It's junk food. Junk food has this in it, right? So avoiding that kind of stuff, and understanding that this is what restaurants cook with a lot, just because it's cheapest, right? Like if you want food that is made with the cheapest quality ingredients, then eat that. But I don't. I think I'd rather have food made from higher quality ingredients. And it's easy to become neurotic about these things.
Sure.
And I don't think that helps anyone in their health or energy levels if you become neurotic about it, right? If you're going to go out to dinner once a month and eat some French fries, it's not going to make an iota difference in your life. Your stomach might not feel great, right? But if all you eat are processed foods full of these cheap industrialized oils, then this is what you're going to be made of, right? You'll say you are what you eat. So, just eat whole foods, use olive oil, use butter, use avocado oil, right? Stuff like that. Beef tallow, right? The minimally processed. It's kind of a great way to look at food is eat food that's minimally processed. And obviously,
Yeah.
all food's going to be processed to a certain extent, right? You're not going to want to eat minimally processed corn, for example, right? You're going to boil it or heat it in some way, so it's edible, right? But minimally processed, and the more that a large food conglomerate has had this in a factory and produced it, the worse it's going to be for you, right? So just some general rules. I think everybody kind of understands
Yeah, there's
this
a deep common sense.
on a basic level, and when you think about Hawkins and some of his energy level testing, right, where at his speeches he would hand out a packet of sugar or envelopes of sugar in it and then envelopes with artificial sweetener in it, right? And you could do a muscle test. You can hold it up to your body and do a muscle test on your arm. And depending on whether or not your envelope had sugar in it or artificial sweetener in it, your arm would be strong or weak, right? And this was apparently repeated thousands of times at his talks and stuff, right? So on some level, we know what is good for us, right?
Yeah.
What's a natural thing, and then on some level, we know what's an unnatural thing. This is how I sort of test all these nutritional theories and supplements and stuff like that, right? Because it can become overwhelming, and you get looking at studies and things like this. It can get very complicated, right? But if I take something for a while, if I'm in tune with my body, I'm going to understand how I feel based off of that, right? And then if I stop taking it, do I want to keep taking it? And kind of whatever my intuitive answer is that's what I should do, I think. Because my body knows whether or not taking this compound was beneficial, more so than my analytical mind knows.
Yeah.
It's kind of an abstract concept. So if my impulse is to say, yeah, I like this, it helps, then okay, I'll keep using it. My impulse is like, I didn't really get much from that, then, don't take it. It's a lot of experimentation because at the end of the day, N always equals 1, right? So it doesn't matter what the study says, and something's effective for 85% of the people. Okay, what if you're in the 15%, right? Like,
Correct.
so you got to try these things, find things that make sense, right, for you, and then try it and see how it goes. And it's just going to be a constant iteration, because as you get older, as your lifestyle changes, as your goals change, you're going to need to live a different lifestyle. You're going to need to eat different foods, right? For example, we moved from New Jersey to Florida, so even something like that, you have to change some of the food you're eating. So some of the food we ate in New Jersey is just not available in Florida. So it's always going to be a constant state of change, which is kind of it's the fun part, is figuring this out and adapting kind of as life goes on.
Yeah, when you mentioned Jersey to Florida, I get feelings of jealousy. Is that natural?
Look, it's there's good things about living here, and there's things
Yeah,
I
for
don't like
sure.
about living here. A lot of the things that I would say I miss about New Jersey, I wouldn't have necessarily appreciated if I kept living there. Right? You kind of
Correct.
only miss it when it's gone. Then I would say the biggest one is just kind of the lack of wilderness here.
Mhm.
Everything here is very, it's set up for cars, and it's in blocks and stuff. So even when you're in a park, it's in the middle of a block basically, right? You're surrounded by busy roads on all sides, right? So there's no really like wilderness except for the Everglades, and that's not something I really would have thought of, right? Out in the area we're from in Morris County, there's lots of wilderness. It's something that I just kind of took for granted, right? But there's definite positives too, right? Getting year-round sun
That
exposure
vitamin
is
D, yeah.
getting year-round sun exposure is such a benefit, and you're able to do that. I was sick a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just like the best thing I can be doing is get outside in the sunshine, right? Like that's going to be the best thing for my healing and recovering from this illness, is just getting that, and having access to that is awesome. And that's kind of why I'm living here. So, look, there's positive to it, and there's negatives to it, just like everything else in life.
Yeah. I wanted to wrap up the health thing with
Yeah.
sleep. What has been your experience with exercising and sleep? Have you noticed quality of sleep going up? How long do you sleep for? Like what's been your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, exercise is such a part of my life. It's hard for me really to like, kind
Yeah.
of tease that out at this point. Sleep is really important. I think it's important to keep a consistent sort of sleep wake cycle. So for me, that's going to bed at 9:30. Pretty much every night. Go to bed 9, but between 9 and 10, I'd say for sure. And then waking up sort of. I'm fortunate enough I don't have to set an alarm most days, right? Unless I'm going to get out and exercise early. But I still tend to get up, between 5 and 7, right? Just kind of naturally, which is great. And I think it's important to keep your circadian rhythm in alignment. And this is why, every morning I go out and get some sun exposure, for, even 15 minutes, just kind of getting that early morning sun. It helps set our circadian rhythm. It teaches our bodies to, it sets the clocks in our bodies. So our bodies release the appropriate chemicals and neurotransmitters and things to help keep you awake and sort of energetic. And then, getting out into the sun throughout the day signals the clocks in our body kind of what time it is, right? And then you see sunset and your body, kind of knows, okay, now it's time to wind down and get tired. And, the chemistry in your body changes as the day goes on. Obviously, something you'll hear a lot about is blue light, right? And the dangers of blue light. Well, the big danger of blue light is that it misinforms your body's clocks, right? It misinforms your body's cellular clocks because it has the kind of characteristic of solar noon. So your cells, your eyes think that it's solar noon when they're being hit with this blue light. So if before bed you're staring at screens, indoor lighting, right, you're going to have a hard time going to sleep because you're basically staring at the sun the whole time, the midday sun, and then you're going to go lie in bed and close your eyes, and you're going to wonder, hey, I'm not tired. Why is that? Right. So I'm a huge proponent of wearing the blue blocking glasses, like the orange tinted glasses. I wear those every night. After sunset, I put those on, and try to avoid screens as much as I can. Right, I'm not sitting around watching the TV most nights. kind of try to be as minimal as possible with the artificial lighting. Certainly not using these bright LED lights. Even right now, I have one of these influencer lights, with the ring lights, right?
Yeah.
It feels like I'm staring into the sun right now. And the first thing I'm going to do when I'm done talking to you is turn this thing off, right? Because it's just like blinding,
Yeah.
and if we were talking at 8 o'clock at night, I wouldn't be using this thing, right? Because it's going to screw up my circadian rhythm. This is the afternoon, so I'll be all right. But that kind of thing is really important. So using black and white mode on my phone, even turning the color off at night, and that helps with eye strain a lot. If you do that, you'll notice immediately a reduced eye strain looking at your phone, and you'll also notice that your phone is a lot less interesting, right, without the color in it. If you think about black and white TV versus color TV, right? So, I'd like to say, oh, I just put my phone away in the 3 hours, but before bed, and I just sit there and meditate and read. That's not true. I'm addicted to Twitter and I'm using it, but I have it in
Yeah.
black. I have it in black and white mode. I have the blue blocking glasses on, so I fall asleep without an issue, and I sleep great every night.
Well, I think that's solid advice for people to take away from this. I've been doing something new with my podcast now. Before I want you to share where people can find you, but if you could ask God one question, you get the answer to that, what would it be?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess I'd ask, what more could I do?
Mm,
Right?
good answer.
Look, I think there's a lot that's not for us to understand, right? And no matter what terminology you want to use, right? God, creator, the universe, right? Like, don't get so lost in semantics, right? There's I think pretty obviously a greater intelligence than us that governs what's happening. I think even most people who don't believe in God would agree with that to a certain extent, right? So I don't think that is necessarily for us to understand everything. So it's not my place to really kind of question how anything works or anything like that. I think that is revealed to me as it's supposed to be revealed to me, right? Kind of as I progress down my journey, the answers to the things I'm supposed to have are going to be shown to me, right? And then other stuff, it's not really meant for me to understand. I've come to terms with that. Sometimes I think God is always communicating with us, right? But it's just not going to be sort of in the human language we understand, because one of the I think single most damaging things is the personification of God, right?
Mm,
He's this old white-haired guy living in the sky, sits at the pearly gates, right? And this is obviously not true, right? And this is a sort of a imagery was probably very valuable at a certain time, right? When we lacked the level of scientific advancement, people would have believed in that potential. Right? But now we have satellites and all this other stuff. I think it's easy to sort of get lost in this symbolism, right? This imagery that you're not supposed to be taking this literally, right? This is not literally what God is. And when you'll see atheists online use the term sky daddy and stuff, right? It's like, no, you're
yeah.
missing the point, right? You're not supposed to take this imagery literally, right? This was a symbol that worked for a long period of time, but now it doesn't work on most people because we have satellites and stuff like that, right? We understand that this is not how it actually is. But I think it's easy to just get caught up in that personification and say, well, this obviously isn't true. Look, this is a lie, right? It's like, okay, you're really missing the overall point here, and you're getting bogged down by semantics and just sort of symbolism for humans. So that's kind of how I've come to see it. And there's this greater intelligence, right? And we have to, I think, honor that and respect that, and put our own human minds aside and listen to that greater intelligence that we're all connected to, and that's really what we need to use to guide us, because our minds are good for certain things. They're good for comparing times in a race, right? For example, right? Because it's an analytical problem. You're just comparing numbers. Human mind is great at stuff like that. But sort of understanding these sorts of things that are far beyond us is never going to be a strong suit of ours, right? We try to use these symbols and language and imagery and allegory to describe the indescribable. Which I find to be people don't necessarily understand that, and it's just like these human words we have are just symbols. You'll read people who have, like, we'll say, near death experiences, right? And they will report consistent things throughout human history. And different cultures throughout history will have very similar sorts of descriptions of what a near death experience is like and what happens. But you'll see modern people talking about, I went to a building, it was, Greek architecture or whatever, right? And I think people kind of get lost in this, and you don't understand, like, this building doesn't actually exist in this form. This is just the form that is recognizable to humans, right? So this is kind of how this comes to us. And this is how we're able to describe it to other people, because words and language are symbols, right? So, what a library looks like. So like if I describe the library to you, you kind of understand the energy of the place. It's not literally that, right? So it's important, I think, that we don't get too tied into the humanness of these things, because we're describing things that are beyond human.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think yeah, I think what I took out of that the most is that, which I've heard recently again, it's, I think, of Bruce Lee. Don't get lost, it's a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger, or you miss all the heavenly glory, trying to explain all those things, and that it's really something to be experienced for yourself, and that's revealed to you when you need it, not, I think that's very well said.
That's a great quote too. At the end of the day, we're just kind of semi-intelligent primates sitting here trying to figure this stuff out. I mean, it's easy to, I think, believe too much in our capabilities.
Yeah.
I think we're not as smart as we think we are.
Where can people find you? And if you could share what you're working on, you said you're doing coaching, so
yeah,
where can people take advantage of that?
So Twitter is Matt Izzo, so it's at MATTIZZO, and I'm on Instagram, Matt Izzo Fitness, and I have a TikTok too, Matt Izzo Fitness, which is I find to be very interesting. So I'm getting a lot of energy trying to grow that, because TikTok gets a lot of criticism, but it is obviously an incredible communication tool when you see, that you can have videos that go viral and can be viewed by millions of people, in a very short time span. So, again, like everything, right? Positives and negatives. So trying to grow that, and then I do offer coaching, right? So that's kind of where I'm at in that kind of process. My long-term goal is to help 1 million people beat obesity. So right now it's one-on-one coaching, kind of brick by brick, as I figure out more ways to kind of communicate my message with the masses. But I work with people kind of one-on-one, and just really build them a custom program that's going to meet their needs. If I just email you a PDF or something, right, and you got to change your life around, that's not going to be a sustainable long-term solution to needing to lose fat and keep it off. So I build a custom program with people, and provide daily accountability check-ins, and just coaching. It's about more than just the physical things of fat loss. It's about more than counting calories or eating different foods or exercise and sleep, right? That's all part of it. But it's also about the mental and the emotional side of it, and really kind of coming to understand what are the roots of these problems, and you can talk online, social media about, let's say, like, what are the causes of obesity? And people will give all these lists of, it's seed oils, it's sugar, it's, it's this, it's that. And like, yeah, on one level, that is correct. These things are all contributing factors in causing this, but like, what's causing it, right? Like what's driving the behavior? How are people able to live in this same environment and not have this happen, right? Other people aren't. And it kind of digs, the roots of this go to the emotions and beliefs and self-image, and that's really, I think, what's at the core of this for most people. And so it's more than just counting calories and figuring, out a good exercise program. It's about, hey, how do I evolve a healthier self-image? So yeah, I can lose weight, but then I also am gonna maintain it effortlessly for the rest of my life because I've evolved my self-image
Yeah,
beyond.
we spoke about that in the first two episodes as well that we
Yeah.
spoke.
So, and I think that's really what we're facing on a large scale thing. You touched on it earlier. 80% of the people are obese or whatever, right? And it seems like in a lot of ways society is deteriorating. It's I think people are in low states of energy. They're in low emotional states, chronic low emotional states, and I think at the core of this, a lot has to do with our damaged self image. A lot of people out there have very low self esteem, and you can see this everywhere. Just people with their self deprecating humor and just their negative self talk and things like that. It speaks to people on the wide scale having just really negative low self-esteem, and that's kind of what's at the root of a lot of this, because you're looking to get energy from other sources, and you're never going to really have a high state of energy if you don't feel good about yourself. If you can't love yourself unconditionally, then you're going to have a hard time in life, because you're going to have lots of faults. You're going to have lots of failures, right? And, if you're going to be hard on yourself and hate yourself for that stuff, then you're never going to really advance and progress. So, I try to teach my clients, how do you balance loving yourself unconditionally, but also holding yourself accountable, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we have to be our own best coaches. You get the best coach in the world, but they're not going to be with you 24/7, right? And so how do you love yourself unconditionally, but still hold yourself accountable? Because when you were at your worst, when you're screwing up, right? All these things, you're just as worthy of love as you are right now when you're at your best, right? So for my case, when I was 32 years old and 250 pounds and passed out from being drunk, right? I was just as worthy of love as when I was running across the Ironman finish line. And that's what unconditional love is, but that's hard for us, I think, to wrap our heads around. Um, because it's again one of these energies that's really kind of beyond human consciousness, I think.
Yeah.
So our sort of words don't do it justice. But definitely, how do you feel? How do you feel about these things? And the roots to these problems lie deep in our psyche, and sometimes, but you have the letting go book right behind you there. Kind of letting go of this stuff isn't really all that challenging, and once you're willing to confront it, you don't need you don't need to have an exorcism for the most part, or anything crazy. It's just kind of acknowledging the feelings and
Yeah,
feeling
it's simple, not easy to
yeah.
start.
Yeah. So you can make though tremendous, tremendous steps forward with that. And it's an interesting approach, I think, to take for a fat loss program. I don't think anybody else really kind of offers what I offer. But I'm somebody who I lost the same 75 pounds 3 times. I struggled with obesity for 25 years, and I lost weight and gained it back again. And I've come to understand why, and it had to do with my self-image and the way I saw myself, the way I felt, right? And the only way to really make it a sustainable thing was to, kind of become a higher version of myself, right? And if you want to be an Ironman, you got to go out and do Ironman races, right? So like you change the way you see yourself through action, through consistent daily action that builds up to these greater goals. Well, that's how you can change your self-image. It's not just repeating affirmations or anything like that, because if you don't back up the affirmations, your subconscious is going to reject that as lies, right? That's never going to work in the long term. So you got to go out there, the Emerson saying that I love: do the thing and you will have the power, right? So you do the thing and you will have the power. So it's you just got to go out and show up and do it every day, and eventually, right, you keep going forward, you're gonna get to a great place.
It's funny when you say that. I know people are hearing it, but I hear it for myself too, because it's something that's true, right? It's a message that I often say we need to be reminded of that which we already know.
Yeah. I mean, there's power in repetition, right? And look, I get a lot out of coaching people too, because a lot of the stuff I'm telling them to do is, it's like, I got to get better at that too, right? Nobody's got all the basketballs spinning at the same time, right?
Yeah.
We only have so much time and energy in our consciousness and our awareness. So you can't have everything on the forefront, and it's helpful to get reminders, especially about the fundamentals, because the fundamentals, if you nail the fundamentals, you eat right, you exercise, you sleep right, like you do that consistently, you're gonna be way ahead of the game.
What would you say to people who are struggling with that, as far as that consistency, that they're completely overweight, they're trying to, they start, they stop, they don't have that fire. How do you have that mindset to push through, when it's,
I, Look, I don't know that I can
initial
help it.
stages?
I don't know that I can help anyone with that, right? I can
Mm,
only help somebody who gets the spark to make a change. I can't convince you to do it, because it's not going to work, right? You have to come around to this yourself. But I think there's a part of everyone that wants to do it, right? I don't think there's anybody who's unhealthy or obese who wants to be that way. And what I will say is the single most important thing for any of this is belief in yourself that you can accomplish this. Right? If you are following a program and you believe that you will be successful and you make intelligent adjustments to how it goes, right? Periodic audit, your progress, make adjustments to it, you will be successful. It is a question of when, not if, right? If you're just consistent and you believe in this. But if you don't believe in it, then you're not going to be successful, because once you hit some adversity, you're going to just kind of throw it away. You're going to say, oh, this isn't going to work, right? So you got to believe in it. And that means, that means believing in it, and that's earned, it's earned day to day. And there's going to, it's not going to be a straightforward kind of quick process. I started walking 10,000 or more steps every day in December of 2013. I didn't lose weight for like 2.5 years, right? I walked 10,000 steps every day and I didn't lose weight for like 2.5 years. At one point in that time, I had the great idea that in order to lose weight, I was going to switch from beer to liquor, right? And it might have worked a little bit, but it created a whole other set of problems, right?
sure.
So it took me 2.5 years to get around to making dietary changes. And then it took me, even more time before I ever thought about doing an endurance race or anything like that. So, it took me 9 years to go from walking 10,000 steps every day to doing an Ironman, right? And, it wasn't something I did in a week or a month.
But I also hear there's you're failing forward, right? You started by doing those
Yeah,
10,000 steps. That didn't work. All right, well, let me switch beer
yeah,
to liquor. That didn't work. But that's
yeah,
actually action, in a positive direction, right? And then,
yeah. Trying
you
stuff.
try things. Yeah,
Developing a habit of flossing my teeth was one of the best things I ever did, right? And it's like it's kind of like the old broken windows theory, right? Or the, like, if you're in a neighborhood with a lot of broken windows, right?
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's gonna have a lot of other problems, right? But like if you start with the simple habits, you say, hey, I'm gonna floss my teeth, right? Because it's a way to demonstrate love for yourself and care for yourself. And rather than, oh, I floss sometimes, probably not as much as I should, right? It's like, no, every night I'm gonna floss my teeth. And that's an easy enough thing to do, right? And then say, okay, every day I'm going to walk 10,000 or more steps. Okay, so I got to walk for an extra hour every day. If I get outside, I can listen to podcasts or have calls and stuff, right? I can make this the beneficial time. It's about layering these habits on top of each other and building positive momentum, right? Self-belief and self-love, it's built over the long term. And you just got to be consistent. And when you screw up, you got to dust yourself off. You got to forgive yourself, learn the lesson from it, forgive yourself, and move on and just start again right then and there. Like sometimes I'll have clients be, well, I made some poor choices earlier, but tomorrow is a new day. It's like, no, start again right now. Right? Don't give yourself the rest of the day, right? Say, I forgive myself, move on. Let's just go right now. And again, you're not going to be perfect. But at the end of the day, transformation is kind of simple. You just, what I tell people is, this is going to be the most valuable part of the podcast, probably, right? So anybody who's stuck around for it, you're going to get kind of the most wisdom I have is, if you want to evolve to a higher version of yourself, sort of envision what that person's life is like, right? Just become that person, right? And what are the things they think about? What words do they use when they talk? How do they behave? Where do they go? What do they eat, right? And then all you got to do is just do that, right? become that person. You become that person by becoming that person. And you got to understand day two, you're not going to be great at this. It's going to take you some time to figure out how to do this. But you can do it if you're consistent, if you kind of implement it in an intelligent way, you can do this. And that's how you become this person. This higher version of yourself is by doing it repeatedly. And then once you get to that point, you can start the process all over again. You can say, well, okay, what is the even higher version of myself? What do they do? Right. And then it's an evolution that just keep going and going and going. But it's about, making forward progress, making consistent forward progress is what it's all about.
Awesome. I think we end on that note because that was gold. Matt, I always truly enjoy our conversations. I think they will help somebody out there some way, somehow. And I really enjoy the tweets that you put out. So give Matt a follow on Twitter if you like positivity and real positivity on your Twitter feed. And I'll have the links below where people can find you. Matt, thanks for joining me again, brother.
Thanks for having me. Great talking with you.